My name is David Mercer. When my wife finally returned from her European excursion, she stood on our front porch with her suitcase tilted back, staring at a brand-new deadbolt as if it were a venomous snake. Above her, the porch light hummed with a tired buzz. From inside, Hannah's baby monitor crackled. That constant, low-level static had become the definitive soundtrack of my month. Lauren tried her key twice. Metal scraped against metal. The cylinder wouldn't budge. "David!" Her voice spiked with a sharp, entitled edge. "What did you do?" I kept the security chain engaged and slid a manila folder against the glass of the door. It displayed a court seal and a date. A few bold lines of legal text were visible, words that didn't care about travel stories or excuses. The color drained from her face so quickly it seemed artificial. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. No, this can't be happening." Across the street, Mrs. Delaney paused mid-watering her hanging baskets, her mouth agape like she was witnessing a high-speed collision. Lauren pressed her palm against the wood. "You can't lock me out of my own home." "You left your 1-year-old daughter," I replied, my voice calm, weighted with a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "You spent a month assuming there wouldn't be a price to pay for that. You were wrong." That's where most people imagine the story ends. The gasp, the locked door, the legal papers. But the true beginning was 4 weeks earlier in the short-term parking garage at Fort Wayne International Airport. A biting Indiana wind cut through my work jacket, and Hannah was screaming in the back seat of my battered Ford F-150. Lauren stood at the curb with a designer rolling suitcase and a leather passport holder, tapping her foot as if I were the one delaying her life. Her college friends, women who still referred to each other as roomie, were already inside, checking in for their grand Paris-Rome tour. Lauren had talked about this trip for months, describing it as if it were oxygen she was being denied. Hannah was strapped into her car seat, her cheeks a frantic pink, her small fists opening and closing. She could feel the tension. Babies always can. "Lauren," I said, keeping my volume low, "it doesn't have to be a full month." She stared past me toward the automatic sliding doors. "David, don't start." "Start what?" I asked, asking my wife not to fly halfway across the world with her friends while I work 40-plus hours and raise a baby alone. She finally turned to me, and I saw that hard, defiant shine in her eyes. It was the look of someone who had already made their choice and was just waiting for the world to catch up. "She's your daughter, too," she countered. "That's not the point," I said. "The point is you're treating Hannah like a winter coat you can just hang up for 30 days. Lauren's jaw tightened. "You're making it sound like I'm abandoning her." "What else do you call it?" Her shoulders lifted in a defensive shrug. She began reciting something that sounded rehearsed, perhaps a mantra she'd practiced on the drive over. "Oprah says women spend their entire lives pouring into everyone else until they wake up empty. I'm not going to wake up empty, David. I need space. I need to remember who I am." I stared at her, incredulous. "We're quoting Oprah to justify walking away from a toddler?" "Don't mock me," she snapped. "I'm a person, David. I'm not just a wife and a mother." Hannah let out a piercing scream that made travelers turn their heads. I opened the back door, leaning in to rest my palm on her daughter's stomach. She quieted to ragged hiccups the moment she felt my presence. My throat burned. When I stood back up, my breath came out in a white cloud. "You want space? Fine. But a month in Europe isn't space, Lauren. It's a getaway." Her phone chimed. She glanced down, and for a split second I saw a flicker of guilt before it was extinguished by impatience. "It's with my friends," she repeated, as if their presence made the act moral. I won't pretend our marriage was a fairy tale. I was 52, a maintenance supervisor at a weary apartment complex near Glenbrook Square. I spent my days fixing busted furnaces, leaking pipes, and doors that people kicked in when they were drunk or angry. I liked things that stayed put and functioned correctly. Lauren was 38, an office coordinator at a dental practice. She had a bright smile and a quick laugh, the kind of woman who could charm a stranger in 30 seconds. But she also had a restless streak that never quite settled even after Hannah arrived. Lately, she spoke about identity as if she'd misplaced it under the sofa cushions. That morning, she kissed Hannah's forehead too quickly. "Be good for Daddy," she sang, her voice forced and overly cheerful. Hannah grabbed Lauren's scarf with a death grip. For a heartbeat, Lauren froze. I thought, maybe she feels it. Maybe she'll stay. Then Lauren peeled those tiny fingers off one by one and forced a smile. "See? She's fine." Hannah screamed louder. Lauren straightened her coat and gripped her suitcase handle. "I'll FaceTime every day." "Sure. And when the time difference hits and Hannah's teething at 2 a.m.?" Lauren opened her eyes. "You always do this. You make everything heavier than it has to be." "It is heavy," I said before I could stop myself. For a moment, the airport noise surged, the rumble of wheels on concrete, a distant PA announcement, the slam of a car door. All I could hear was Hannah's crying and the thud of my own heart. Lauren stepped closer and touched my arm, a light, fleeting gesture like a stranger might give. "David, I just need a break. Don't punish me for needing a break." Punish, as if I were her father, as if she were asking for permission rather than deserting a responsibility. I wanted to beg her to stay. I wanted to yell at her to get in the truck. Instead, I swallowed it all, because Hannah was watching me through wet lashes. I refused to let her see a father who falls apart in a parking garage. Lauren backed toward the terminal doors. "Text me when you get home." Then she turned and walked away without a backward glance. I stood there until the sliding doors swallowed her. Hannah's screaming softened into hiccups. I reached back and squeezed her tiny hand through the car seat strap. "Okay," I whispered. "It's you and me, kiddo." On the drive home, the radio played a cheerful pop song, mocking the fact that my world had just shifted. My phone buzzed at a red light. It was a photo of the terminal. Lauren's caption, "Finally breathing again." I stared at the screen until the man behind me honked his horn. That was the moment the realization landed in my chest. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was a clean, cold kind of truth. If she wanted 30 days of living like she didn't have a family, then I was going to stop pretending she did. The first night was brutal. I didn't sleep. I took shifts being awake. Hannah woke at midnight, then 1:40, then 3:05, like she was punching a time clock. Each time the baby monitor hissed to life with that burst of static, my stomach clenched before I even opened my eyes. The apartment was quiet in that deep, heavy Indiana way, just the hum of the fridge and the furnace clicking on and off. The air smelled of formula and warm laundry. I'd run the dryer twice just to keep up with the bibs. By the third wake-up, I was pacing the kitchen in my socks, bouncing a 1-year-old on my shoulder, while the microwave clock glowed 3:12 a.m. like a silent judge. "Shh, honey, I've got you." Hannah's face was hot against my neck, her fist curling into my shirt, and I felt a sharp, ugly jealousy toward my own wife. She was likely toasting champagne in an airport lounge while I was measuring life in ounces of formula and minutes of sleep. I didn't even know where the spare pacifiers were. Lauren always knew. I rummaged through drawers like a thief in my own home until I found one, washed it with shaking hands, and Hannah latched onto it with a desperation that made my heart ache. That was the first lesson. You can't take a break from a baby. You can only leave someone else to carry the entire weight. By day 3, I was running on fumes. Everything felt too loud, too bright. The clink of a spoon made me flinch. The smell of sour milk on my sleeve followed me like a fog. And I still had to work. I was the supervisor at Maple Grove Apartments, an aging buildings, elderly tenants on fixed incomes, and young couples who expected miracle repairs. My phone was a constant barrage. Furnace out, toilet leaking, disposal jammed. On Monday, I walked into the office with Hannah and her diaper bag slung over my shoulder like I was trekking the Appalachian Trail. Ron Keller, my lead pec, 61 years old and smelling of coffee and motor oil, looked up from his clipboard. "Where's Lauren?" "Europe," I said, trying to sound casual. Ron's eyebrows shot up. With the baby? With her friends, I replied. Ron just stared at me. Then he looked down at Hannah, who was chewing on the strap of her sippy cup. Well, he said slowly, that's something. I tried everything. Daycares were full, babysitters were overpriced, and the women from the church bulletin boards sounded like scams. I did what fathers do when the world doesn't make room. I made it work. I kept Hannah in the office for a few hours, then raced her to my sister's place, then sped back to Maple Grove to plunge a toilet while my head pounded. By the end of the week, I'd missed meetings and botched work orders. My boss, Vince, pulled me aside in the parking lot. David, he said, rubbing his temple, I'm sorry about Lauren or whatever, but I need you sharp. I'm trying, I said. Vince nodded, not unkindly. Try harder. Tenants don't care about your personal life. I wanted to tell him that tenants didn't care about Hannah's teething either. I just nodded. Pride doesn't pay the rent. That night, Hannah ran a fever. It wasn't a panic-inducing temperature, but enough to land us at the urgent care on Coldwater Road. The waiting room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. A nurse called Hannah's name, and I stood up so fast my knees creaked. I held her while the doctor checked her ears. Teething, the doctor concluded. Keep her hydrated. Alternate Tylenol. You're doing fine, Dad. Fine. I walked out with Hannah asleep on my chest and almost broke down in the parking lot simply because a stranger told me I was doing fine. I texted Lauren. Hannah had a fever. Urgent care. Teething. She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she did, it was a selfie in front of a lit-up fountain in Paris, a scarf wrapped stylishly around her neck. Caption, Paris Magic. Below it, a text, she okay? 2 words about our child, 3 sentences about herself. That was when the anger solidified. It became focused, like a tool. On Friday, I checked the bank app. The balance in our joint account was wrong. I scrolled through the transactions. $486.20 restaurant charge, $113.90 hotel deposit, $328 ATM withdrawal. I stared at those numbers. We weren't wealthy. We were the kind of couple that argued over a $70 dinner. Now she was dropping $500 on a single meal while I was buying store-brand wipes. I looked at my own receipts. $18.34 infant Tylenol, $42.91 diapers, $9.67 gas station coffee. I wasn't jealous of Paris. I was furious at the imbalance. She had taken the fun part of life and handed me the unpaid labor like it was my divine duty. At 2:50 a.m. another night, Hannah woke up screaming, full-bodied, red-faced, angry. Diaper was clean. She refused the bottle. I rocked her until my arms shook. Then I realized we were out of Motrin. I buckled her into the car seat and drove to Walmart in the dark. The store was a sea of fluorescent lights and tired people. I pushed the cart one-handed while Hannah's cries echoed off the high ceilings. In the baby aisle, I blinked at the rows of medicine, my brain too tired to read the labels. An older woman in a puffy coat slowed down as she passed us. "Rough night?" she asked softly. "You could say that," I muttered. She looked at Hannah with a face that had seen everything. "You're doing good," she said firmly. "Babies don't remember who went on vacation. They remember who showed up." My throat tightened. "Thanks." Back in the car, Hannah finally fell asleep. My phone buzzed. Lauren had posted a photo of the Eiffel Tower behind a wine glass. Caption, "Self-care is not selfish." I stared at the screen until it went dim. Then I opened my notes app and started a log. Dates, times, facts. Not because I wanted a war, but because I knew something was coming and I wouldn't be caught empty-handed. A few days later, a group shot from a cafe appeared. Lauren and her friends grinning over pastries. I zoomed in. In the window reflection behind them, I saw a man, tall, broad-shouldered. It could have been a waiter. It could have been nothing, but my stomach dropped. I didn't accuse her. I just went back to the bank app and took screenshots. I kept every medical receipt, every time-stamped message she ignored. By week 2, My notes were a record of abandonment. The next morning, Hannah's tiny hand was wrapped around my finger. It felt like a pair of handcuffs. Not the kind that trap you, but the kind that keep you grounded. You don't get to find yourself when a human being is depending on you. You either show up or you don't. At work, Ron found me staring at my phone. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too," I said. Ron poured a cup of coffee. "She call much?" "FaceTime twice," I said. "Mostly talks about the architecture." Whistle through his teeth. "That's cold." You know what I did wrong in my first divorce? I told myself she'd come around. While I was being patient, she was moving money and rewriting the story. By the time I stopped being patient, I was standing in court with nothing but feelings and a mortgage. He slid a business card across the bench. "Patty Hargrove, Family Law." "I'm not telling you to go to war," Ron said. "I'm telling you to stop acting like the only tool you're allowed to use is your pride. Protect your kid. Courts don't reward good intentions, David. They reward paperwork." The legal strategy. I called Patty Hargrove from a UPS store parking lot the next morning. Her office was in a low brick building. Patty was in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. I told her everything. The airport, the month in Europe, the ignored fever, the $500 dinner. Patty didn't judge. She just took notes. "David, the law doesn't punish someone for taking a trip, but it cares about patterns of responsibility. You are the sole caregiver." "What could I do?" Patty flipped her legal pad. "Temporary custody. It's a legal seatbelt. It keeps the child secure while the court sorts the rest. Also, separate your income. It's not petty, it's making sure Hannah's basics are covered." She looked at me intently. "The hardest part for men like you is thinking silence is noble. It's not. Silence doesn't show up on a judge's desk. Paper does." I pictured Lauren's face at the airport. She's going to be furious. "Then we prepare for that quietly and legally," Patty said. "We file for temporary custody before she returns. We stop letting her set the terms. Short, polite, documented communication only." The wall around Hannah. When I left the office, the sky was the color of dirty snow. I sat in my truck and looked at Lauren's last message. "Rome, can you believe this place?" I typed, "Hannah had a fever. Please call." Then I deleted it. I replaced it with, "Hannah's asleep. Hope you're safe. Short, polite, documented." I wasn't building a case to hurt my wife. I was building a wall around my daughter. The next few weeks were a series of unglamorous moves. I opened a new bank account for my paycheck. I sorted receipts into piles: medical, food, supplies. I wrote in a spiral notebook every single day: date, time, event, cost. I joined a Fort Wayne Dads Facebook group. I asked about sleep routines. I learned how to cook meatloaf from a YouTube video at midnight. I grew accustomed to the wait. On a Wednesday, daycare called. Hannah had a temperature again. I was halfway through a water heater repair. "I'm on my way," I said. My boss Vince was waiting when I got back. "Again, David?" I didn't have a choice. "Get it together," he said. "I can't run this place with one hand." That night, I sent Patty a photo of my logs and the bank statements. My hands shook from exhaustion, but I felt a strange, steady calm. Patty called the next morning. "I filed the motion. We should have the order soon. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. No drama." I looked at Hannah in her crib, trusting me completely without knowing a thing about court orders. My voice came out rough. "I never thought I'd be doing this." Patty's voice didn't waver. "Most decent people don't, David. That's why they lose." I started the engine of my truck. One thought settled in my gut. Your mom wanted freedom, kiddo, so I'm going to make sure you're the one who is actually protected. Don't do anything that looks impulsive, Patty said. Wait until we have the temporary order in hand. I stared at the wall, listening to Hannah babble on her playmat. Lauren comes home soon, I said. Yes, and that's why you need to stay steady. If she comes home angry, let her be angry. You be prepared. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from Lauren. A picture of her feet on a beach somewhere. Toes in the sand, a wine glass in frame like a trophy. Caption, Last night. Can't wait to sleep in my own bed tomorrow. I felt something twist in my gut. Part rage, part relief. Tomorrow. I looked at Hannah, who was chewing on a rubber giraffe and smiling at nothing. Okay, I whispered, more to myself than to her. Let's do this right. The custody order showed up the morning Lauren was due to land. A plain white envelope, court seal, no drama. Just paper that weighed more than any argument we'd ever had. Hannah sat in her high chair, smearing banana across the tray and humming to herself. I stood at the counter and read the first page twice because my eyes didn't trust what they saw. Temporary custody granted, primary placement with father, exclusive use of the residence for the child's stability pending hearing. My hands went cold. Then they started shaking. I called Patty. "It's here," I said. "Good," she replied. "Stay calm, don't argue on the porch. If she escalates, you call non-emergency. Let the paper do the talking." "What about the locks?" "With that order, yes," Patty said. "Today, and keep it clean, no taunting." I hung up and looked at Hannah's sticky face. "Okay," I whispered. "Seatbelt on." By noon, the deadbolt was changed. Drill whirring, metal clicking into place, 2 new keys in my palm that felt heavier than they should. I set the manila folder on the kitchen table. Court order on top, my log behind it, receipts clipped neat. Not a weapon, just a fire extinguisher. All afternoon, the house felt too quiet. The furnace kicked on. The baby monitor hissed. Hannah babbled to her stuffed bear like she was giving it a sermon. At 6:12 p.m., headlights washed across the living room wall. A rideshare pulled into the drive. Trunk popped. Then I heard the hard clatter of suitcase wheels on old porch boards. I lifted Hannah onto my hip and stood where I could see the door glass. Lauren stepped up like she expected applause. Long coat, scarf, face still pink from travel. She slid our old key into the new deadbolt. Scrape. Nothing. She tried again, harder. Her smile faded, then vanished. Then she saw me through the glass. "David," she called, bright with confusion. "Why isn't it working?" I didn't open the door. I kept the chain on. Lauren's eyes flicked to the chain, her mouth open. "Are you serious?" "Lauren," I said, calm and tired, "you can't walk back in like nothing happened." She laughed once sharp. "Nothing happened. I went on a trip. You knew." "I knew you were leaving," I said. "I didn't know you'd leave our daughter like she was luggage." Hannah stirred at the sound of Lauren's voice. She blinked, then tucked her face against my shoulder. Lauren's smile cracked. "Open the door." I raised the folder. "Read this," I said. I slid it against the glass so she could see the court seal and the date. Her eyes dropped. Her hand froze on the knob. "What is that?" she whispered. "Paper," I said, "the kind that doesn't care about excuses." Lauren leaned in, reading through the window like she could bully the words into changing. Her lips moved, her brows pulled tight. Then the blood drained out of her face. "No," she breathed. She scanned again, faster. Her breathing got loud enough that I could hear it. "No, no." Her voice cracked. "This can't be happening." Across the walkway, Mrs. Delaney paused mid-step, eyes wide like she'd just heard a crash. Lauren snapped her head up at me. "You went to court?" "I went to protect Hannah," I said. "You're punishing me." "I'm not your dad. I'm Hannah's." Lauren's voice climbed. "I needed a break. I FaceTimed." "I didn't get any FaceTimes," I replied. "You sent selfies. You didn't ask about her fever until after urgent care." Her face twitched like she was searching for the right mask. "David, I didn't realize it was that hard," she said, suddenly soft. "I'm sorry. Okay, just let me in. Let me hold her." For half a second, I wanted to. Not for Lauren, but for the picture of a family I'd been clinging to. Then I remembered 3 a.m. at Walmart and Hannah crying into my shirt. "Not like this," I said. Lauren's softness snapped back into anger. "Oh my God, you're loving this! Super Dad with his little notebook." "It's not a notebook, it's a record." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "So this is about money." "It's about responsibility. Money's just where your choices left fingerprints." I lifted the folder and held up the bank screenshots against the glass, the $486 dinner, the $1,139 hotel, then the urgent care receipt, then my log with dates and times. I didn't speak louder. I didn't have to. Lauren stared, swallowing hard. That's controlling. You're spying on me. It's our account, and our child. She grabbed the doorknob and rattled it. The chain snapped taut. Hannah startled and let out a small cry. Don't, I warned. She slapped the glass with her palm. You can't lock me out of my own house. The court says I can, for Hannah. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Ask them to read the order. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up slow, tires crunching gravel. Porch light buzzing, Mrs. Delaney hovering like a nervous angel. The officer walked up the steps, glanced at Lauren, then at me through the glass. Sir, he called, can we talk? I opened the door just enough for the chain to hold. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sharp smell of airport and perfume. Yes, sir? Paperwork? He asked. I handed him the folder through the gap. He read under the porch light. The world went quiet, except for Hannah's soft breathing and the baby monitor's faint hiss from inside. The officer looked up at Lauren. Ma'am, this is a temporary custody order. It also grants him exclusive use of the residence pending hearing. Lauren's face went slack. No. Is it valid? The officer said, if you want to change it, you do it in court, not on a porch. I'm her mother, Lauren said, her voice thin. Then follow the order, the officer replied. You can request parenting time through the proper process. Lauren turned to me, eyes wet. You planned this, she whispered. I met her stare. You gave me 30 days to learn. I couldn't wait for you to do the right thing. Her jaw clenched. She grabbed her suitcase handle and dragged it down the steps, wheels clacking, each sound a small humiliation. At the curb, she stopped and looked back once. Hannah's eyes were open now, watching over my shoulder. Quiet, steady. Lauren's mouth trembled. Then she whispered it again like a prayer that didn't work. No, this can't be happening. The ride-share trunk shut. The car pulled away. Red taillights faded into the winter dark. I stood there a moment with the door still chained, my daughter warm against me. Then I closed the door, slid the bolt, and breathed like the air inside my own home finally belonged to us. Not anger, protection. 3 days after that porch scene, my hand still reached for the baby monitor before my eyes were even open. That soft hiss, that little crackle of static had become my morning newspaper. Hannah slept through the night for the first time in weeks on the 4th night. I didn't celebrate. I just lay there in the dark with my heart still racing, like my body didn't believe peace was allowed yet. The house smelled like clean laundry and the faint cinnamon of the oatmeal I'd burned that morning, because apparently I could rebuild a water heater in 30 minutes, but still couldn't cook like a normal adult. The kitchen light buzzed the same way the porch light did. I remember thinking I should replace that bulb, like replacing a bulb would fix everything. I went to work that Monday, and half the complex seemed to know, not because I told anyone, but because small towns and apartment buildings run on the same fuel, whispers. Vince didn't say a word. He just tossed me a work order and muttered, "Pipe leak in 3B. Ron Keller caught my eye in the hallway and gave me a single nod. No speech, no, I told you so. Just that look men give each other when they recognize a hard choice. Later in the maintenance shop, Ron poured coffee and said, "How'd she take it?" I exhaled through my nose. Like the floor dropped out from under her. Ron sipped. Good. Not good, I corrected, surprising myself. Just necessary. Ron looked at me a second longer, then shrugged. Necessary is the word people use when they don't want to admit they did the right thing. I didn't answer because my throat tightened. The right thing can still feel like grief. Lauren didn't disappear after that night. She texted, short at first, then longer, then angry again when short didn't work. I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. I'm her mother. You're acting like a monster. I stared at the screen while Hannah slept, her tiny chest rising and falling. The urge to write a paragraph rose in my fingers like a reflex. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted to defend myself like I was on trial in my own kitchen, but Patty's voice came back. Fast, short, calm. So I typed one sentence. Please communicate through Patty Hargrove's office per the order. Then I set my phone face down and went back to folding tiny socks that looked like they belonged to a doll. 2 days later, we had our first exchange under the new schedule. Patty arranged it at a public place. Nothing dramatic, just a neutral handoff at the Fort Wayne Public Library parking lot, where there were cameras and witnesses and no room for screaming. The sky was low and gray. The air smelled like cold concrete and exhaust. Hannah was in her puffy coat with little bear ears on the hood. She kept tugging at my collar, babbling, trying to eat the zipper. Lauren pulled in 10 minutes early, like she wanted control back in any form she could grab. She got out of the car with her arms already open, eyes bright with nerves. When she saw Hannah and my arms, something softened in her face. Real, not staged. For a second, I saw the woman I married, the one who used to laugh at the county fair and dance in our kitchen while I pretended I didn't like it. "Hi, baby," Lauren whispered, voice shaking. Hannah stared at her. Then she leaned her head into my shoulder. Lauren's mouth tightened. "She doesn't recognize me." My chest pinched, but I didn't let it show. "She's one. She recognizes who's here." Lauren flinched like I slapped her. We stood there in that quiet parking lot, while other people walked past carrying books and coffee like their lives were normal. Lauren reached for Hannah, slowly, cautious now. I let Hannah go, but I stayed close, not because I wanted to punish Lauren, but because Hannah's body tensed, and my job was to keep her steady. Lauren held her like she was trying to memorize her weight. Hannah fussed, then calmed when Lauren started humming. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't nothing either. Lauren looked up at me, eyes wet. "I didn't think..." Her voice broke. "I didn't think you'd do this." "I didn't think I'd have to." She swallowed. "I just wanted to feel young again." That word, young, hit me harder than anger ever did, because I understood it in a way. Not the leaving part, but the panic of time moving too fast, the feeling that your life got assigned to you and you didn't get a say. I stared at my hands, rough and cracked from work. "I'm 52, I said quietly. "You think I don't feel time?"
Lauren looked down at Hannah. I wasn't trying to hurt her. "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. "But you still did." Lauren's shoulders sagged. "Is there any way I can fix this?" That was the moment I could have gone for blood. I could have brought up the money again, the pictures, the reflection of the man in the cafe window. I could have demanded confessions and watched her squirm. Instead, I heard myself say, "Show up." Lauren blinked. "Not with souvenirs," I continued, "not with speeches. Show up when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when nobody's taking pictures." Lauren nodded slowly, like she'd never heard responsibility said out loud before. Patty had told me something else during one of our phone calls. The court can't force someone to be a good parent. It can only set boundaries around the child so the child doesn't get crushed by someone else's choices. That's what my revenge really was. Not humiliation, not cruelty. Boundaries. In the weeks that followed, things got quieter. Not easy. Quieter. Lauren tried to push back at first. She asked for extra time, then got upset when I said it had to go through the schedule. She sent long messages full of emotion. I answered with short sentences full of facts. She hated it, I could tell. But something changed when she realized the paper wasn't going away. She started showing up on time. She started asking specific questions. What Hannah ate, what time she napped, what her doctor said about her teething. Not glamorous questions, parenting questions. One night, Lauren even texted, "I bought diapers. Which size is she in now?" I stared at that message for a long moment, then let out a tired laugh in my empty kitchen. "Progress," I muttered to myself. "We're celebrating diapers." The hearing came and went without fireworks. Patty did what she does. Calm, steady, prepared. Lauren's attorney tried to make me look controlling. Patty slid my log across the table like it was the simplest thing in the world. "This is not control," Patty said. "This is caregiving." The judge didn't care about Lauren's photos or captions. The judge cared about Hannah's stability.
I walked out with the arrangement extended, and the weirdest part wasn't the relief, it was the sadness. Because the truth was, I didn't win a prize. I just stopped losing ground. A month later, I took Hannah to Glenbrook Square and let her toddle around the little play area in the middle while I sipped coffee that was way too hot. Old couples walked past holding hands. A grandfather sat on a bench laughing while his grandkid tried to climb his knee. I watched Hannah wobble on her feet, determined, stubborn as a Mercer. She fell onto a diapered bottom, looked up at me, and grinned like falling was just part of the plan. I realized something then that I wish I'd learned earlier. Responsibility doesn't make you smaller, it makes you real. And people who run from responsibility don't come back refreshed, they come back shocked that the world kept moving without them. Hannah will never remember the month her mother left. She won't remember the 3 a.m. Walmart run or the urgent care waiting room or the porch light buzzing while papers changed our lives. But I will. I'll remember how close I came to begging a woman to love us properly, and I'll remember the day I stopped begging and started building. So if you're listening to this and it feels familiar, if you've ever been the one holding the responsibility while someone else chased freedom, I want you to hear me clearly. Sometimes the quiet one isn't weak. He's just done talking. If this story hit you in the gut, share it with someone who knows what it means to stay. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, grounded ones, stick around, subscribe, and come back tomorrow. You're not alone in this.